Today is the Queen's 94th birthday, Your Majesty, and for the first time in her reign, the occasion won't be marked by gun salutes on the direct request of Her Majesty as the coronavirus pandemic continues.
Well, here to explain more is our Royal Editor Camilla Tominey. Good morning, Camilla. Thank you for joining us this morning. So, what will the Queen's isolation birthday look like?
Well, like most people having their birthdays in these strange times, it's going to be a bit of a damp squib, unfortunately. So she's there in Windsor Castle, still self-isolating with Prince Phillip at 98. It's going to be quite quiet. We think they're just going to celebrate privately. There might be a Zoom conference call in there because I know that the Queen has been using Zoom, not just with family and friends, but also as matters of state have taken place virtually. So she held her first Privy Council meeting on Zoom a couple of weeks ago. So there may be that kind of video conferencing interaction. But like all families, unfortunately, because of their age, they're isolated in Windsor and they can't see their nearest and dearest.
So why did she decide not to do the gun salute?
I think that tradition, which has been around for decades, she just felt would have been inappropriate. The last thing she wants is people gathering outside Buckingham Palace, which is near where the gun salute goes off. And I just think she thinks that there are more important things to worry about than her birthday. To be fair, royals don't really do birthdays. They're more into celebrations around jubilees or trooping the colour or major royal events. So they're not big on birthdays anyway.
Camilla, we should talk about these text messages, these Meghan and Harry text messages to her father. In documents filed at the High Court on Friday but made public yesterday, laid bare emotional text messages between her, Harry and her father as they pleaded with him to accept help ahead of the royal wedding. This is kind of goes against everything that we were led to believe happened, that they sort of left her father, didn't offer any support, any help, any contact leading up to the wedding. So a lot of people would be quite surprised by seeing these messages today.
Yes, exactly. This is the opening salvo in their court case against the Mail on Sunday, and the Mail, who viewers might remember, published this intimate letter between Meghan and her father, laying bare her emotions around his behaviour in the run-up to the wedding. All of the time it had been asserted really by Thomas Markle and the newspaper that they hadn't offered any help, they'd just cast him adrift down in New Mexico, and he ran into trouble because he didn't have any support. And this does change that narrative.
Well,
although
it changes the narrative, excuse me, massively, because on one of them, Tom, it's Harry. I'm going to call you right now. Please pick up. Thank you. Tom, Harry again, really need to speak to you. You don't need to apologise. We understand the circumstances, but going public will only make the situation worse. If you love Meg and want to make it right, please call me, as there are two other options which don't involve you having to speak to the media, who incidentally created this whole situation. So please call me so I can explain. Meg and I are not angry. We just need to speak to you. Thanks. Oh, and speaking to the press will backfire. Trust me, Tom, only we can help, as we've been trying from day one. All of that, very different to what was reported in the newspapers.
Yeah, very different. But then equally, people were still scratching their heads at the time, if you take yourself back to May 2018, at the notion that Harry hadn't even met his father-in-law and that they hadn't flown out to try and square all this with him in advance. So that's a difficulty. Second of all, while I think that the texts do lay bare their side of the story, and that's what this quest against the press is all about, this idea that there should be balance in reporting, what's counterintuitive about it is the fact that this is about a breach of privacy. This is about the fact that this letter that Meghan penned to her father was exposed in the public. And yet this very court case is even more publicly exposing. In a way, they are invading their own privacy by releasing these texts in order to set the record straight. So some people have looked at it and said, well, you're trying to keep the press at bay and to live this private existence. Yet at the same time, you are raking up headlines by the hour with this stuff. But both sides, and I've spoken to lawyers on both sides of this, will not back down. It's going to get nasty because neither side is willing to settle out of court, which means that this row will run and run as the court case continues.
What happened yesterday, because Meghan was expected to make a landmark appearance on USA Today TV show. This is about the documentary, the Disney Plus documentary about the elephants, which is lovely. I've seen it, actually. It's very sweet. She didn't do it. They aired a press clip instead. Why would she make that decision?
To be fair, I don't think the Good Morning America interview was ever set in stone. It had been mooted that now they're over in LA, she could do her first live interview, although that would have been done remotely. And I think there was this conclusion that actually the timing wasn't quite right. Although she's given this brief snippet, basically, to mark the Elephant documentary, there has been a lot of question marks over the timing of some of the couple's interventions, and this sense that actually, while we're all grappling with COVID-19, particularly in America, where the death spike is just going northwards, is this the right time to start setting the record straight about her interactions with the royal family? So whatever the plans that there was, and we know that Good Morning America have been offering the couple the earth to speak and do a sit down, and I'm sure they will, is the middle of a global pandemic the right time to do that?
What about their decision to write to the editors of The Sun, The Mirror, The Mail and The Express and their websites saying that that's it, they refuse to cooperate with them anymore?
Well, the Society of Editors, which represents the newspapers industry, has said that it's a form of censorship, and there's an argument for that. I mean, it is quite propagandist to basically only speak to favoured journalists who you know are going to give you a good write-up and not perhaps provide the scrutiny that we're used to with HM's press. But equally, they feel that they've had a drubbing at the hands of the tabloids. The difficulty with that strategy in saying, and I work for Broadsheet, so brilliant, we're in favour with Harry and Meghan, is that you are cutting off huge swathes of your own audience. And it can seem quite elitist to say, well, we're not going to cooperate with the tabloids. Well, lots of people, lots of ordinary people who Prince Harry has always made it a habit to say that he connects with and is down to earth with, read papers like The Sun and The Mirror.
Yeah, but Camilla, if they're reading those papers and they're reading things that aren't necessarily true, as they've just said by publishing, or they're not connecting with them in the right way anyway. They're connecting with them in a story that's not necessarily the way they remembered it or was true to them.
Yes, but we also know that when we ask people to corroborate or comment on stories, I mean, if I had a penny for every time aspects of royal stories were denied, only for them to be true, I'd be a rich woman, right? Of course, we're under an obligation to report in a balanced way. That's why I come on this show and we write stories at length, but not corroborating or collaborating with tabloids as opposed to broadsheets doesn't help them when it comes to communicating the truth behind their messaging. In fact, you could argue that it just gives the tabloids carte blanche to write what they like. And equally, there's these collaborations going on in America with certain journalists who we know have had a habit in the past of dealing with tabloids and selling in tabloid stories. This idea that you have to ask Harry and Meghan's permission to write a story about them is a bit of a fallacy in the first place. When I was writing for a tabloid, the Sunday Express, and I broke the story of their relationship in October 2016, I didn't actually run it past the palace first because I knew it was true. And it did turn out to be true. So let's not pretend that everything that's been written about the Sussexes in the tabloids is false. Of course it's not.
But also it means that any one of those tabloids can pick up a story that's written in a broadsheet and then spin it in their own way. So there's no way they can control the media.
No, of course. And equally, we're in this, not only 24/7 news cycle, but every minute of the day, blogs are updated and websites are refreshed. And so we have breaking news the whole time. And that's quite right. If my paper, The Telegraph, for instance, was able to land an interview with Harry and Meghan where they talked about anything from elephants to the press to Archie to the Queen, we would run it online. And then obviously all the tabloids could quite happily rip it off. I mean, I've had a look, for instance, this morning at the tabloid coverage of the texts, and it's all comprehensive. I mean, it's not like the tabloids are sitting on this information about these texts that have been now revealed to have been sent by Harry and Meghan to Thomas Markle. They're covering it. This is about the couple saying that they don't like some of the coverage that has largely been in the tabloids, and particularly motivated by a prince who we know doesn't like the press and has in the past done things like read the comments at the bottom of the Mail online. I mean, that way...
Never do that.
You two would know that, right?
No, never. That's like staring directly up the devil's bottom.
Oh, Lord.
Camilla, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll end it there, I think. I think it's a suitable place to...
No, let's end it there.
Thank you.